and I don't know how they're doing.
Okay.
Okay, so it's 2 o'clock. How are we doing on folks? So
we have 8 attendees.
Yeah.
So good afternoon, everybody. I know that there's some people on the line from libraries. Welcome to the webinar for giving you some updated information and letting you have a chance to communicate with us about the FiberConnect project and your FiberConnect connections and how you're using them and how you plan to use them going forward. I'm sitting here. This is Marty Reed, State Librarian, and I'm sitting in Montpelier at a table at which there are 3 other people.
Sharon Combs-Farr, I'm the Director of Marketing and Interim Director of Sales for SovereignNet Communication.
Jeremiah Kellogg, Library Development Consultant, Integrate Coordinator at the Department of Libraries.
Sherry Yeager, Assistant to Marty.
And then across the way, on the other side of the state capitol, Kevin Nadsom is in the Department of Information and Innovation. Kevin?
Good afternoon, everybody.
Okay, so as you know, we're doing 2 of these webinars. We're going to record them, and the best of the bunch we'll make available to the folks that are not able to attend one of these webinars. And I don't have the webinar screen in front of me, but we want to make sure, first of all, that you are all hearing us. So there is an opportunity for you to do chat, to send a message to us. And if you're not hearing us, if you're not able to connect, if you would just send us a quick message and we'll see if we can get you connected just fine. That chat box that you see there, there's opportunity for you to make comments, ask questions at any point during this webinar. We're going to keep track of those questions and comments and respond to them. Then at the end of the webinar, after all the presenters have given their content, we'll open it up for Q&A. And I think that's probably going to be the most important part of this whole thing is for you, if you have questions to ask us, you can do that by chat, but I believe we can open it up to live question and answers so you can actually talk with us. So, and that's an option. So do we have any messages that anybody can't communicate with us?
Don't see any.
Okay, looks like we're good to go. I think I've done my part really here. I'm just welcoming you. We're going to be covering several different topics related to the FiberConnect project, and I am going to turn it over first to Sharon Combs-Farr from SovereignNet.
Well, thank you, Marty, for this opportunity, and thanks to all the folks who joined. I really appreciate this chance to address you guys. I prepared in this presentation more information than I would ever dream of putting you through on this thing. I was just going to hit a few key points, talk a little bit about the contracts for everyone's data connections, and then give an example of a recent service. One of my team members consulted with one of the libraries on the system, and I thought it was a great case study I was going to show you. So basically, I think hopefully you guys are aware that we're your service provider for FiberConnect. We sell our internet, which was made possible by a federal grant as well as our own investment. And we were very pleased to really transform our business from a small competitive local exchange carrier that had its roots in the office we still have today in Bellows Falls over 20 years ago, and really through federal stimulus funding was able to become really a world-class data provider. And so now, in addition to serving great community anchor institutions like the 42 or so libraries in the system, we also are just really proud of our work with multiple other community anchors such as UVM Medical Center and lots of school systems, lots of nonprofits. So we've just been really, really, thankful for the opportunity to really expand and transform our business. And sure, we have a lot of business customers now too, enterprise customers, but it's our roots and community anchors that we're the most proud of. So one thing that Marty had wanted me to talk about today is the contracts, which will be coming up soon. So I'm going to go ahead here. This is a list of all of the libraries that are part of this system. I think one of the libraries on here opted for an internet connection as opposed to the data connection. And I'm not sure if that would be covered in the E-rate, but that's something that the design of the system, in addition to other benefits that I think they'll go through about why you were on this network, there's also an E-rate benefit to actually having the, we call it a wide area network connection or a transport connection with us as opposed to internet. And, for example, the case I'll go through later, that particular library, after their E-rate subsidy, I think they're paying $56 a month for our connection, whereas the library that opted for their own internet connection, they're paying the full amount of the internet connection, which is much more than $56 because this is a business grade service that we provide. This look at the contracts is just to refresh people's memories on when your contract will be. It's I believe they were 3-year contracts or 5-year contracts. Now it's like a 5-year contract. 5-year contract. So you'll see I sorted this list in order of the libraries whose contracts are coming up soon. You don't have to take any action when your contract comes up. It's not like you lose your service or that the price jumps up or anything. I know with some other providers that they bake a discount in when you're under contract, and then when you're out of contract, the price jumps up. We don't work that way. So not that I'm saying I wouldn't want you to recontract with us, because of course I do. So I might give you an incentive, maybe lowering the price or adding something new for you to renew a contract with us. But in the case of the library, when your contract was up, we added more bandwidth. That's right. And that was a way, obviously, to allow the network to grow and to continue the contract. So so I'm not saying, the Martha Canfield Memorial Library in Arlington, their contract is up in about a year. So certainly at some point before that contract is up, we'll reach out and talk with them. But there's no sense of urgency in doing anything. Your price is not, going up when your contract ends.
So can I ask you a question? Because I'm sure this question is in the minds of the librarians on the line. They're planning their fiscal 18 budgets now, and I see a bunch of contracts that are going to expire in 18.
So you may need, for E-rate purposes, you may need to be under contract. So that's a good point, and that may be an E-rate thing. I think that is a benefit to the institution to being under contract, but sometimes they can renew. I know when you do E-rate, there's a little box you can check where you can do auto renews, or you can do 12-month renewals without having to actually literally sign. And so that's something you can look into for the consortium. But from our perspective, we're not planning on raising these prices. We're not, then this pricing, I know the state technology officer, and I know Kevin's on the line, these are great prices for what you're getting. So, and obviously we're not going to be price gouging libraries.
So for their budgeting purposes, they can
they shouldn't expect any change. Great. I do think that you have some power users, and so we can discuss whether those libraries might want bigger connections with us and to you, and that certainly we can look at whether right-sizing these connections, smaller and larger, makes sense. And we have time, as you can see, we have a year or more to figure that out. So that's all I wanted to set your minds at ease about contracts. And then, of course, I wouldn't be in sales and marketing if I didn't have a sales pitch. And I'm not going to go through all of the detail, but one of the benefits of being connected to a system like ours is that you also get the opportunity to take advantage of telephone service run over an internet connection, or using the technology of the internet without literally running it over the internet connection. And so this is something where more and more, many small businesses, libraries, anchors are looking at, we call it a hosted PBX system. So if you're a library with 1 or 2 or 3 phone lines, this is not going to apply to you. But in the case of the example that I have, one of the libraries that's part of the system, they're a relatively large library. They have 10 phone lines. So I'm going to just you can look. We'll make these available if you're really interested in this. You can look at why you would do it. But the reason why this actual Vermont FiberConnect library, which I have nameless, and if you want to know who it is, we can talk about that later. They had 10 phone lines with Fairpoint, and then of course they had their data connection to FiberConnect through Sovereignnet. Their E-rate was very generous, and so of the I believe it's a $200 cost of the connection. After E-rate, they were paying $56 a month, and their 10 phone lines were $25 a piece, and so they were paying $250, and they did not choose to use E-rate for that because I know it can be complicated on the phone side. So the library was spending about $306 a month on their services. So they actually had wanted to have a system with all these more advanced features, and they were looking into a hosted PBX system with us, and they worked with Mike from my team, and they established it had all the features that they wanted plus some extra benefits, and they decided, yes, we want to do that. And so the way it works is you're also getting your phone equipment. So if you have old handsets, and you're thinking about, normally that might be a big capital investment to buy like 10 new phones. In their case, what they're doing is they're essentially renting those phones from us over the first 3 years in this contract, and then they own the phones. So even when the point where they're paying for those phones, they're still saving about 4% from what they were paying with Fairpoint. But after the 3 years are up, they don't have to pay for the phones anymore. They own the phones, and they get to keep them. And they could even decide that they don't like us and go with, Comcast or someone and still use those phones. They're not proprietary to us. They can reprogram and use them somewhere else. So it's not like a hook to make you be with us for the rest of your lives. You can just, if we think you'll like our service and you like working with us, and if that's the case, then after the 3 years, if they stayed with us, they're going to save 26% off their phone system. And they got all those new phones, which of course, if one breaks, we replace it. So even when they own their phones, we still help them with the maintenance and so on. So that was just something that we thought was interesting. If people are looking for other options for phone service, it's a way to use that piece of equipment that we stuck in all of your libraries so that you could be part of this, this network. There's also other things we can do with that. One of them is we can run this phone system over it. So that was all I was going to talk about today. And then if you feel like, oh, my phones are about to die and I need new phones, so we can talk about that offline.
So
sure, you can list. So anytime you have someone asked if you can list in the phone book, sure. So anytime you buy a business phone connection, and in fact, you wouldn't even be switching your phone numbers when this happens. So Fairpoint doesn't own your phone numbers, and this is a change that occurred, I would say, probably 10 or more years ago, where the numbers are portable. So in the case of this library, the 10 phone lines that they had with Fairpoint, they simply, we had to go through a process for us to take over those phone lines. And so all the listings information stays with that, and your exact phone numbers stayed with that. But certainly if you wanted to add more numbers or delete numbers or whatever, you can obviously do that when you change as well. But yeah, they're a full business class phone that comes along with the listing as well, sure. And most people don't technically get a new, usually when people go through a change like this, they realize that they have too many, they usually reduce. Most people, when they go through a change, they realize, hey, what was, we don't even know what that number was, because we have a process to contact, in this case, Fairpoint, and they tell us all the numbers you have, and then we work with you. And it's always a good chance to be like, oh, we don't really fax anymore. You can fax to email, so then you can still have a number, but it's more of a virtual number, that kind of thing. So that's my sales plug. But again, thank you. We're very proud to be partners in this network, and I don't know if I gave it to Jeremiah or if I give it to Kevin.
Well, I'm just going to make a comment. First of all, I want to thank you for being here, and thanks Sovereignnet. In my 8 years in this job, this is really kind of a primo project. We really have put lots of effort in it. Got money from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that supported this, and working with Sovereignnet has been just really great. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I think I thank you for the ongoing cost, the fact that there's no price increase will be really welcome news for the library. So thanks, Sharon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank your powers that be over there in Bells.
Yeah.
So any other questions for Sharon? I mean, we'll have a Q&A later, but if you've got a question for her now, we'll just. All right. Okay. So I think, let's see, my agenda next is Kevin. Most of you or all of you know Kevin personally. If you were around when he was building your network, designing and installing equipment, you'll remember Kevin. So take it over, Kevin.
Hey, I'm going to try and take control of the screen, Jeremiah. If you'll pass it off to me, I'll put a chart up there for us to take a look at.
Huh.
Nothing? Maybe? I think you have a copy of the same chart that I'm going to display, but it's always nice if I can
Do you think we have to?
point that at and interact.
Huh.
It looks like I don't have the authority to become the presenter. The button is grayed out.
I wonder if we click on attendees and then pick him.
That's a good idea.
I found it
Our
hard.
computer is freezing up here.
I feel like it worked better on the icons. Oh, yeah, there we go. Whoops.
All right.
I think you can promote. Did it let you?
For some reason, Kevin, it's saying you're offline.
Make a presenter.
No, I can see you.
Go down here.
Yeah, I just did that. And
I saw your first 8 slides.
Do you have the slides? Can I can see them there? Maybe we can.
Why don't I go through my list backwards, because that chart is the only visual that's really necessary.
We have
you
it.
guys could keep working on it and let me know if
We have
something I
it.
need to do on my side.
can you see the chart
So
now?
you have the chart.
Yep.
Can you guys see it? I can't see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
I wonder if you go back and make.
Can everybody else see it? Would somebody
No.
hop into the chat and
Okay,
tell
so
us if you can
no.
see the graph?
Maybe we need to click on the.
Yeah, for whatever reason, when I click on that tab, it won't bring me the drop down.
Do you see
Okay,
that?
yeah, we see that we're getting the feedback that no one can see it.
Did you see the note, Luna?
Sure, if you click that, I think it'll work. We think you should be able to see it soon now. Yes, okay.
I don't see
Somebody
it.
said that Kevin was
Yeah.
So it
off
looks
the
like-
attendee list now.
It looks like that the librarians are able to see it.
Okay, so I'm gonna talk as if everybody can see a chart that has a million little lines on it.
Yes.
Any are
Green and
blue,
blue.
some are green.
Yep.
That's great. So let's talk about network utilization. I think everybody knows that the FiberConnect network gets a lot of use, and from a network engineering point of view, that's fantastic. So you can see, this is just going back 6 months, you can see in March that we were peaking out. The blue lines are download traffic. We're peaking out every day at about 100 megabits per second. The green lines are upload traffic. And you'll see that every once in a while we get a nice spike in green, and that's great. I always imagine that as a small business user coming in and taking advantage of the huge bandwidth upstream, which is a tremendous benefit of FiberConnect that users don't have on their home connections that you provide in your libraries, especially that transition between May and June. You can see a lot of people coming in there and taking advantage of that. And then quite noticeably on July 12th, the lines jump up, and that is because the Department of Libraries and Sovereign was able to upgrade our internet connection by 50%. So your bandwidth, whether you noticed it in your library or not, the available bandwidth to all the libraries went from 100 megabits per second up to 150 megabits per second. And in true FiberConnect and Vermonter form, we enjoyed a honeymoon for all of 4 days before we hit the peak again. And like I said, from a network engineering point of view, hey, that's great. That means that the network is being used to its fullest potential. In fact, when I look at utilization charts, there are often gaps on the weekends, but your libraries are in use 7 days a week. The traffic certainly is less on Sundays. I know that most, if not all, of the libraries are closed on Sundays, but that is not stopping folks from coming up to your library and taking advantage of the wireless connectivity that extends beyond the building itself, and they're getting online. And so that's why you don't see weekends in this graph, or if you do, it's a very thin gap. And so that's been outstanding, that that bandwidth is available to everybody. Any questions about network utilization? Anything anybody wants to know? I'm not seeing the chat windows, I don't think. The last chat I have is from the Department of Library saying hi.
Yeah, we haven't
got
got
anything in there. Okay. Awesome. So next on my list is I want to talk about hardware maintenance.
Oh.
When we connected, I'm sorry?
So we did get a question that says that the Wi-Fi permission page is difficult sometimes, or not a question, a statement.
Okay. Oh, okay. So one of the things that we were asked to do as part of the initial setup is to make sure that the library's acceptable use policy was displayed to anyone connecting to the wireless. And it's done an okay job of keeping up with technology, but there certainly are devices out there. I mean, we're trying to accommodate hundreds of different devices that might connect to your Wi-Fi. There certainly are devices out there that are unable to display that acceptable use policy. There are very few, but they are there, and those would not be able to connect to your public wireless. But all of the typical devices, every iPhone, every iPad, all the Samsung phones, all of the Windows tablets, all of those have a means to display that because it's displayed in a standard called HTML that almost every device with a browser supports. Really, the only devices that aren't going to be able to connect are those that don't have a web browser built into them. And so I do realize that it presents an extra step when connecting to wireless. And I know that for some users who aren't as familiar with the device, that can be a bit of a hurdle. But I think in a lot, well, I know in a lot of cases, as we've seen the monthly reports go out, the utilization is quite high on the wireless networks, dozens of sessions every day, if not hundreds, at some of the libraries.
That one other bad section, the YA light, or the YA section is really dark. Yep. So in the short term, I'd say that the
so
do we?
So I know we can hear. It sounds like someone's speaking, but I'm not sure if they were speaking to the group or whether.
More, but we can do those another day, depending how much time.
I think it might be Guilford Library. Their microphone is green.
Yeah, they could come see me. I mean, I should be.
So go back to your attendees.
So,
for me, so I could always interrupt.
So I don't think this is meant to be for this group. At first, I thought it was a question for Kevin.
Yeah.
But
you might be able to mute them there at whoever the meeting organizer is. Give that a try. But I'm going to keep going then to hardware maintenance, unless I missed another question. Okay, in terms of hardware maintenance, when we deployed the network equipment to all of your libraries, the first year of maintenance on every piece of hardware was included in the setup cost from the Department of Libraries. And so any security patches, any operating system upgrades that were necessary were paid for. Were bundled in there during the first year. In consecutive years since then, hopefully you have taken the suggestion of DII and you've maintained SmartNet at least on your router. You'll know that you're doing this if once a year you're sending an agreement to Cisco or perhaps to Presidio was the partner we initially worked with. It's about 10% of the price of your router. So for the smaller libraries, the price is a little bit less than it is for the larger libraries, which have a slightly higher end router to handle their volume of traffic. If you are not maintaining that maintenance, then security patches and other things cannot be installed to your router. Now, we deploy both routers and switches, and I'm not talking about the switches. And the reason for that is we've found at the state that because the switches are protected by the router, you can choose to let SmartNet go on those switches. We're not as concerned about it from a security point of view. And SmartNet does not necessarily cover immediate hardware replacement either. This isn't necessarily a warranty type situation. Our primary concern is SmartNet on your router for the security patches that make sure that malicious attacks directly on the router itself are kept up to date as we update your router. So if you are not aware of that, or if you have questions about that, please, by all means, send an email to me, or I'm going to talk about the service desk. You can call into the service desk as well, and we can provide you more information about that and make sure that you are in touch with the folks at Cisco that provide that support for your routers. The good news is, even though routers have a lifespan and often go out of service, the routers that we chose to use on the FiberConnect project are currently, none of them are ending their lifespan in the next 5 years. And in fact, we only use 3 different models. 2 of the 3 models, Cisco hasn't even identified an end-of-life date. So that's fantastic. That means we've got great quality hardware out at the libraries. You should be looking at a 7 to 10-year lifespan of your router. I know that's not the immediate fiscal year, and I know that means some of you won't be looking at it right away, but please tuck it in the back of your mind that after you've been on FiberConnect for between 7 and 10 years, you're going to find that your router is no longer current. And we'll make sure in these webinars and in communications that we keep you up to speed with that. By comparison, cell phones have a 2-year lifespan, so really getting 7 to 10 years out of the router is a good lifespan. I'll take a pause there. Any questions about hardware maintenance?
Kevin, I'm going to break in. This is Marty because I see some folks saying that the idea of SmartNet is new to them. I don't have this in front of me, but we sent a contract to every library, and I think, and I may be wrong, maybe some of you have this at your fingertips. I think there was something about a requirement to keep those SmartNet contracts up to date as part of being in the FiberConnect and having us purchase internet service. So I'm going to go back and look at that, but we'll gather information. We'll send out a blanket information packet electronically to all the FiberConnect libraries, so they have the latest information about SmartNet.
That would be great, Marty, because we are all in this together. If one router on the if one library decides not to protect their router, that represents a vulnerability for all of us. We all share a circuit, if you will, that connects all of our routers inside the internet edge. And so it's very important that everybody keeps that SmartNet maintenance on the router, just the router, up to date for security reasons.
So we definitely captured that. It looks like a lot of people were interested in that. So we'll obviously we'll prepare, not we, but we
Great.
prepare something.
So,
and I'll work with you, Marty. I'll make sure that we get the right contact info there.
Yeah, we'll send out more information about this.
Great. And then the last item that I have to talk about is the DII service desk. That is the place that your library directors, you can call in at any time to request either support or network connectivity if something is not working as you expected it, or you can just call in there for information. And really, we've seen about 60 tickets come into the service desk from libraries so far this year. That's about 2 a week. I got to tell you, about a third of them are just information, and that's fine. There are libraries that are calling up the service desk and saying, hey, we're about to make this change on our network. Perhaps you're decommissioning an old workstation and putting a new one on. You're not sure if you need a network change. You can call the service desk. They'll open a ticket. I am one of 6 engineers. I try to grab the library's tickets whenever I can, but really any of my colleagues can help. And we'll just pick that up and we'll tell you whether there needs to be a network change or not. Sometimes the answer is no, just unplug. In fact, in the case of a wired workstation, you don't need us. You just unplug the old one and you plug in the new one. On the other hand, if you're going to add a new workstation, you might need a switch port turned up onto your either your staff wired network or your patron wired network. That is also handled through our service desk. we sent you all a handout, or I handed it to you in person the day that we did the cutover. Now, that's been a couple of years, so maybe you've lost it. Maybe you are one of the directors that taped it to the router or taped it to the network rack. I always love to see that. But I know, Marty, you've got a copy of it there. That might be worthwhile. I just found it this morning to send out in our information as well. But one phone number to write down for all of you, if you don't have it right now, is 802-828-6620. That is the DII service desk. 802-828-6620. And you're going to just, during the business day, you're going to speak with someone, a live, living person. They're all right down the hallway from me, and they will open up a ticket on your behalf. They're going to ask you, what library are you from? They're going to ask you, where are you trying to connect from? Are you trying to connect from a staff workstation? And to what resource are you trying to go? Maybe you're trying to browse Google and you can't get there, or maybe there's something specific with your library information system and you want to know if the network is causing a problem, or if change is going to work on the network, or maybe you need information for planning. That's the way to get a hold of us. There have been a number of issues, not a lot, but a significant number of issues that have come into our service desk that are actually outside of the scope of DII support. And when that happens, we'll work with you. We'll give you as much information as we can, but there does come a point where we'll say, hey, look, this appears to be an issue with that particular workstation, or this appears to be an issue that is beyond the technology that we support here at DII on the FiberConnect WAN. And again, we try not to slam the door. We try to give you as much information, get you going in the right direction. Often it involves pulling in your own library IT staff or the contractors that I know many of the libraries work with, and getting them engaged. We'll help you as much as we can, but there are some issues that are outside of our scope, and if that happens, we'll let you know that in the ticket. Communication from the service desk after that initial phone call does happen via email, and so if you put in a ticket and you don't get a response within about 48 hours, call in again and say, hey, I haven't seen anything. Every now and then we get a typo in an email address. Sometimes I'll pick up a ticket, I'll notice there's no response, and I'll actually send an email outside of our ticketing system. But really, we try to keep it in our ticketing system. That way we can monitor how much support we're providing to the FiberConnect network. And it also gives us a paper trail so that if I'm not in the office, colleagues can pick up and help you as well. But that's the DII service desk. It's the exact same service desk that state employees use, which is kind of neat. We support all of the state offices around the state from that same hub. So you guys have access to that as part of FiberConnect. Questions about either the service desk or anything I talked about today? Those are my three speaking points for this afternoon.
You know, I actually have a question about the help desk. So you said you got, I think you said 60 calls this year, which averaged about 2 calls a week. And I'm just curious, this is Sharon from SovereignNet, how many of those, you said sometimes they're outside of your scope. I mean, what percent do you think, like, do you think of those calls fell within your scope versus didn't fall within your scope?
I think we're probably 90% in scope, 10% out.
Okay. I'm only asking because SovereignNet has a subsidiary in New York State, and we actually won a contract with a library system, the North Country Library System. So there's 42 libraries in that network also, and I'm not sure how they're arranging help desk and that kind of stuff. So I think the information about what's been going on here would be valuable offline, obviously, to help as they put that together. Yeah, it would be interesting to have it basically the same size and everything. Yeah.
That's
Sharon, I think
very interesting.
I think one very valuable piece for the libraries is DII supports just the network. And when something comes in that's out of scope, it's very often having to do with a server or a workstation or a library information system for which the network is a transport.
Right.
And if SovereignNet has the ability to support that broader range, I think that could be a value that some of the libraries might be interested in.
Right. And then it doesn't seem like it's been that often that you have had issues or questions about the internet itself, which obviously, I mean, that would happen from time to time, but so.
Well, Kevin, thank you. I think that's great news, and the handout that you talked about, we will send that out along with the SmartNet information, so that you'll get that. And again, as I thank SovereignNet, I thank the Department of Information and Innovation. I think I'm right in that the 42 libraries are the only entity that have access to that help desk other than state government. Am I right about that, Kevin?
I think so. I can't speak for all of DII, but I know when I look at the tickets coming in, the public libraries are the only group that really gets in the door. Everybody else, when they call that number, if they're not a state employee, the folks in the service desk do a good job of weeding them out.
So you're privileged folks, and I'm glad that it's working for you. So I don't see any other questions. We're going to turn this over to Jeremiah.
Okay, so E-rate. I spent the last month of the fiscal year trying to figure this stuff out. USAC, the entity that kind of oversees all of this that we submit all of our information to, has a new system this year. And they didn't quite work the bugs out, and it's been particularly problematic with consortiums. So everything was submitted on time. But I have a sneaking suspicion that we won't start seeing our discounts until a little later than we usually expect. I think September is usually around the time it starts. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if that was bumped up to October, simply because consortiums across the country have had some problems with this. So we need to continue to work with them.
So should I alert my billing department of that? Because if it's about the E-rate reimbursement, obviously we want to take into account, like not sending like disconnect notices or whatever. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you didn't pay your bill. I mean, so just to make sure that we're ahead of it, because there's a certain, some of it is sort of automatic, like where you send the bill. But I think with E-rate, we have someone specific in accounting who works on that. So I think that they would realize that that's what it is. But I'll make sure I talk to accounting.
That would be helpful. Okay. I know that I've talked to some libraries in the past where their cash flow really depends on these discounts, and when they're even a month of rate late, that's a problem. So if any of you out there are in that situation, or you're ending, maybe your fiscal year ends in December, and so you're kind of wrapping that up and a little worried, just let us know.
Yeah. So that's essentially what I have for E-rate.
So I was going to mention something because I wasn't sure what you were going to mention with E-rate, but we had talked about, when I went through all the contracts, we talked about all the libraries and how there was one library who did their, they decided rather than being part of the system that you have together, they decided they wanted their own internet connection. I did want to make sure that everyone is aware of the E-rate implication of that, because E-rate does require, because as you may know, E-rate applies to libraries, but it also applies to schools. And so to get the reimbursements from USAC for internet connections, you have to have certain types of like filterings and things like that, that generally speaking, as a library, you don't do that, because libraries sort of philosophically are like, freedom of information and all of that. Whereas a school, of course, they do that as a general rule because they're trying to protect the kids and that kind of thing. So we do have a lot of schools who purchase directly from us, and then they get E-rate discounts on their internet. But we know that in the case of libraries, you don't, because you choose not to do the filtering, which we know why you don't do that. But that's a major benefit for you as individual libraries to be part of the system, because what you're purchasing from SovereignNet is not an internet connection. You're purchasing transport to this network. And that is fully E-rateable by all of the guidelines. And of course, there's no, trick to it. And so that's why in the example I gave, that particular school had a high E-rate reimbursement. So instead of paying, $200 for the connection, they paid $56. And just so as you think about your budgeting and being in the system, not being in the system, I just want to just put a plug on being part of the system. Not only do you get the help that Kevin mentioned with the help desk, you also get to take full advantage of that federal subsidy for your transport. And thirdly, this is something that I think we agreed that we would talk about another time, but as part of our agreement Sovereign had with the libraries, we also gave the network at no charge, connection to Internet 2, which I know it's getting more and more understanding in Vermont about what Internet 2 is, and that's a full conversation for another day, but you do get access to that, and I think we've seen some flow in the network to Internet 2, and it's essentially like the Internet, but it's a more academic and research-oriented Internet content, but it also has gatekeepers, educational gatekeepers, and so the gatekeeper for Vermont entities wanting access to Internet 2 is UVM. And anyway, so it's kind of a long conversation for another day, but it is a benefit that you get by being part of this network.
So we do have a question here too, whether or not the state support will continue with E-rate. I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few things that the state pays for, and one of the things we pay for is your internet service. So we have equipment that we purchased at the core, which is housed here in Montpelier, which Kevin oversees, that core equipment, which manages this network. As part of that network, we're able to get with SovereignNet discounted rates as an aggregate for the network, so that we're paying for that internet cost. So we do not file for E-rate on that internet because of the SEPA requirement for filtering. So we pay that cost for you. We do not get any E-rate reimbursement on that because we want to keep those networks open, right, and your access open. So when the contracts expire, what's going to happen with our internet service, which is also another concern for you, and that's something that we're going to have to really look at and project, make sure that our budgets are covering that. I'm working on the 18 budget right now, and it's certainly we're covering all of this in the 18 budget. We think that the E-rate discounts is essential for this. We support E-rate, so I don't see any reason why we would ever stop doing that. Those of you that might be applying for E-rate on your own for phone service, you probably already know that changes in the FCC rulings and what they call the E-rate modernization program, they're phasing out phones, and I can't remember what year that actually disappears, but it might be this next year.
Yeah, I think by 2019.
2019.
I think it'll be
so
out.
every year they're giving less and less return on phone system because they know that the world is moving from POTS, which is plain old telephone service,
yeah,
to telecom, and so those of you that might be applying on your own for phones, at some point you're going to have to make a decision whether it's worth your time and effort to do that because the return's going to be less and less.
And then, so it sounds like, yes, you are working on, and I do think that the E-rate process does require some type of contract. So whether we decide if we're going to do annual contracts or longer than that. I mean, typically, kind of back in the day, the 5-year contracts were pretty much standard, but that's really not the standard anymore. 3 years, 2 years, and then I think and I think there is a way to have an extension, which you could probably look into that too. So good. It sounds like that's yet another benefit, which we didn't mention, that you get the assistance with the application for E-rate, which I'm sure from the standpoint of the librarians is like, whew.
Yeah, probably.
It's a huge savings. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, not worth our staff time. Yeah, I heard that a lot on the phone side, that it's not worth staff time for the phone part.
Right.
I did have many libraries call this year and say that they've decided that they no longer want to do the paperwork for that because it wasn't good payout.
I want to say something, extend a little bit what Sharon was just talking about, the Internet 2 capability. So, because one of the questions that came up when we had our in-person sessions, that was last fall, some of you may have attended those. We had meetings in Barrie and Rutland, and a lot of you attended those meetings. And at that time, we talked about, why be on this network? Why be part of the wide area network managed by the state? And we were looking at the advantages for doing content delivery or possibilities for using these networks across libraries. The internet too really offers some great possibilities for that. Before Sheila Kearns left to take another job this summer, she was working with UVM. Patrick Clemens is the Internet 2 guy up there, working closely with him to explore what Internet 2 could offer this network, and we'll continue those conversations. In the short term, one thing that we've used on this network is some of your libraries have video conferencing equipment that we got a few years back from a grant from Google. 5 libraries of those 14 with the video conferencing are on the WAN. And this past spring, right, winter, spring, we worked with the Young Writers Project. So some of you would have been involved in this project where we had a young adult author at the Kellogg Hubbard Library in Montpelier and doing a writing program for teens. And we had teens, I think, in 5 libraries around the state that were able to interact live with this author, do writing exercise, communication, ask questions. And we were able to use the wide area network. They were all FiberConnect libraries. We were able to use that network and used something called Blue Jeans, which is a software bridge. We want to expand that capability. We have a little bit of money left from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that originally gave us money to help us with this project. So I've contacted some of you for putting video conferencing equipment in your libraries, so you're going to be able to really participate. You can participate without this. It's just that the cameras and microphones and screens and everything are pretty high quality. If I haven't contacted you and you're interested in that, let me know. Just send me a quick email. We're going to be ordering that equipment, and we're contracting with the Young Writers Project. Doug DeMeo up there is going to be going out to these libraries to train staff, train volunteers to use this equipment, and they're also going to be putting together a manual, like a binder that your staff can use and also members of the public can use when they come in to use the equipment. So it kind of guides them through how to use the equipment so they won't be such a drag on staff. So we're always looking for ideas for how to use this wide area network. It's a terrific resource. Some of you are going to have ideas that we haven't thought about, and we'd love to hear those. And I don't think that I have any more content other than Q&A. Do either of you want to add anything?
No.
I was curious about, because we still haven't, and I guess you all are still looking at Kevin's chart with the 100 megabits per second cap and then the 150. And I was curious how the individual users at the libraries, how the satisfaction is about the internet access that they get through the network. Has that been positive, that people, like, no one's like, oh, I'm starved for bandwidth, or, I mean,
No,
how do you
no.
feel that that's working?
Star Electronic is on from Brattleboro, and I know they're one of the heaviest users, and so I don't know, Star, if you saw a difference or whether your users made any comments about the, increased bandwidth. I'm not sure. I don't think I heard anything from anybody.
Okay. And so it looks like Luna's reminding us that the Guilford had asked how to read the Wi-Fi reports. Is that something Kevin would know? Or is that you, Jeremiah?
That would be Kevin.
Yeah.
The Wi-Fi reports are a whole big chunk of data, and I believe Sheila put something together at one point where you could copy and paste the data in to a, I don't know if it was an Excel spreadsheet or a Google spreadsheet that would do some analysis. But what I would suggest for those, you can open it up in any spreadsheet that you choose and simply sort it by the data received. And you can just get a quick look at how many sessions were there. You can ignore those where there's 0 data. Those are people that never clicked yes on your acceptable use policy. but that'll give you a very quick look at how many users connected to your wireless network in the past 30 days. If you want to drill down even farther, you can begin to take a look at those high-end users at the top, see how much data they're pulling down. I look at one library every month. When that report goes out, I pull it up to make sure that we're sending you guys quality data. It's one of the larger libraries, and like I said, they are seeing thousands of wireless sessions every single month, to the point where, you know, if you break it down over 24 hours a day, there are multiple sessions per minute throughout the day. Now, we hope that that's not between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., but maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe the neighbors stream Netflix. But that's what I would do at a bare minimum with those reports. If you want to drill down more, if you want to understand more of those statistics, I would encourage you to reach out to the Department of Libraries. I know Sheila used to do a little bit of that, but it becomes some Excel skills and just understanding what that data is. It can be very helpful when presenting to boards or to other funding sources. It can establish for you how much use your wireless network is giving to the community.
And Kevin, while you were speaking, this is Sharon Starr, mentioned that they had been experiencing some frustration prior to the increase, but that since the increase in the connection occurred back in early July, that it's been smooth sailing since. So I took a picture of that.
That's nice to hear.
I took a picture of that comment because I thought it was great.
Thanks,
One of the things that amazes me is that our Internet Edge router, it's not dropping packets. And we're pushing a tremendous amount of traffic through there. There is some delay, and I know that that's what's causing the frustration out there at the library. But the bigger that pipe is, the more the Department of Libraries can afford, the more Vermonters are going to push through it, and that's great.
And it looks like Luna volunteered to help other people. I think that's with the Wi-Fi reports. Is that right? So that if folks have questions about the Wi-Fi reports, you can go directly to Luna.
Thanks, Luna. That's a great offer. Okay, general questions. What have we not covered that you had hoped we would, or questions that have popped up while you've been listening?
I think it's exciting.
I think it is. It continues to be exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I think from the Sovereign perspective, we were kind of worried because we know there was the grant and everything in the beginning, and you know, obviously we want people to have value of it. We know some of the libraries are you know, very small, so they have to really think through.
Right.
You know, is this something we can afford? And then obviously the E-rate subsidy helps, but different communities have different levels because I think everyone's aware that the amount of your reimbursement is tied to the percent of the children in your school systems in your service territory that are on free or reduced lunch.
Right.
And so there are some communities, you know, that are, you know, so-called wealthier communities, but it's based on the population in your public schools, I believe, and not all schools.
I think it is.
It's public schools, yeah. So.
I don't see questions. You just made me think of something now. It just went right. Oh, good. Okay.
You know,
Kevin can't see that.
Oh, yeah. So it says some of our patrons are happy with our service and wish the bandwidth was available to residents too. You know, and there are sometimes, I mean, I have to say that I live in Ludlow and we have a great library. I don't know. I know Ludlow does not have Sovereign at Fiber, so the Fletcher Memorial Library is not part of the system. However, I have been known to stop by outside the library to get on the Wi-Fi connection. And by residents, they probably also mean people who don't have internet at home. So.
And some of you may not know, but if you really look at the list of these 42 libraries, actually it was late in the game that I learned this, that our smallest library on the network is Wyndham. They're open 2 hours a week. And they took this leap of faith to get fiber into their library. And you can bet that people are in that parking lot all those
Yeah.
hours that the library's not open, that Wi-Fi connection.
Well, and when I was director of the Vermont Digital Economy Project, that was something that we saw was really important with those connections. Even one of the towns, for the grant was Halifax, and they certainly, I don't know if anyone is on or has been to Halifax, but they literally don't have there's no, downtown, there's no, commercial district or anything, and so the connection at that library is important to
Yes.
to the area.
Yeah.
Just really that people come from. I mean, kids stay after school in the parking lot and do their homework. They do. So.
Okay, Luna, I love your comment. We'll be considering this when we design
our new parking lot. Yeah,
what a good idea.
It is.
So we've just got a couple of minutes left till 3 o'clock. We said we wouldn't keep you more than an hour. We're not going to. So, yes, Guilford also commenting on how full the parking lot is after hours. That's great. I think it's a terrific service of your libraries, and that's that kind of usage statistics when you're looking at those reports that Kevin was talking about. Yes, and Luna says those results are surprising on the reports because you're not there to see
Marty,
it.
I just pulled up the data for Internet 2, and I chatted this out. I don't know if I made it, though, but we actually saw 2 spikes on the Internet 2 circuit over the last 6 months, where over 100 megs of data coming down over that circuit. And so that's a huge benefit. In fact, the utilization is up all across the board. It looks like it hovers between 20 and 40 megabits per second on most days. And we should keep in mind that Internet 2 bandwidth is in addition to the 150 meg that's available to the public internet.
Right. And yeah,
that's great. I mean, wow.
We're getting a lot of requests for Internet 2 connections because you mentioned Patrick Clemens earlier. That's his 24/7. That's what he's working on at UVM, and he's been promoting the benefits of it. So we've had nonprofits connected to us, and so people are seeing that as an extra benefit of being on the SovereignNet system, that we have direct access to UVM. And
so we'll continue to monitor that, looking for input from you, libraries, on how we might use that, or what you want us to explore. I think it might be good to have, I think what we'll do is schedule maybe in the coming months a meeting that
I'm sure
Clemens
Patrick would
come.
come.
We could do one of these, and he could talk to you about Internet 2. I think that would be great.
I do want to add, Marty, the individual libraries won't necessarily see that their traffic is taking advantage of Internet 2. Their routers make that choice on the way out. If they've got a faster path to the destination over Internet 2, it just shoots it out that circuit. So a lot of the library directors who are online, you might be thinking that you're not using Internet 2 services when, in fact, you are. It's just that your routers are doing it behind the scene and providing you more bandwidth via SovereignNet's transport without any complication.
Thanks. That's great. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, 3:01, time for us to let you go and do other things. Thank you so much. It's great to have you join us today. Keep in touch. We love hearing from you.
And do you mind sending out the PDF version of my presentation to
I
folks?
don't mind at all.
Okay,
I'll do that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.